Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us for today's webinar on issues management. So today what we're going to be going over is the new issues feature that you all have access to via our beta program. The point of the webinar today is to get you better acquainted with the issues feature as well as give you a sense of where our product team is going with it. We'll give a brief introduction and then jump into issues itself. We'll walk through an overview of issues management and the components of the feature and then demonstrate it live in the platform. We'll also be asking you some questions via polls and then are going to encourage you to ask questions as well. I'm Sarah Husain on the client education team here at FiscalNote, and today I'm joined by Amanda Wynter on our product team. She's been working on the beta program for the issues feature set. Many of you may have spoken with her already as she's walked you through the feature or has gotten feedback from you and your colleagues. So we're excited to have her here on the webinar, and thank you for joining us, Amanda.
Thanks so much, Sarah, and good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for finding time to hop on this webinar. Before diving into the features and the functionality, we wanted to take some time to talk about where this feature came from and what we imagine for the future. For issues management, a number of you were part of our initial research into this space. For a long time, we were calling this feature set, actually we were calling it projects, because initially we imagined people working on small projects with their team, and we wanted to provide a space for you to do so. After some digging, and this all happened throughout late 2016 and all throughout 2017, after some digging and some client feedback, we actually realized that this space was much broader and that there was a much broader process happening at your organizations. And that process kind of boiled down to issues management. This process is much more comprehensive than simply working on a project, and we found that it requires coordination across many business units, many teams, and a collection of a lot of information. So this is why we started building what we're calling kind of a workspace, or as one of our innovative clients actually told us on a call a few weeks ago, almost a whiteboard for you to collect all of your information and actually start to do work within the system. When we think about building new features and providing new functionality to you, we like to think of them in terms of its parts. After coming up with the parts, we actually like to think about how all those parts flow together. So issues begins to connect the dots between four components, as you'll see here: awareness and monitoring or identification, planning, execution on those plans, and then measuring your execution. But when you apply those themes to the work you actually do every day throughout the session and out of session, we recognize that this actually comes from, it actually boils down to collecting data, using analytics to understand that data, collaborating with your team across that information, and then again, measurement. Looking at all of the information, all of the activities and collaboration that you've done, and understanding what were the outcomes and how were you able to influence them. So something you'll note is the last theme and the last application, they're the same: measurement. And this is actually a really critical part of issues management and one that we're really interested and excited to start digging into. So I'd encourage, as we go through this webinar and as you use FiscalNote and use issues every day, to think hard about what would measuring your work look like on the issue level? What would it mean to report on your issues? This is something that we'll go over a little bit later, and we'd be really interested to hear your feedback. Now we'll actually just go through an outline of all of the tabs within an issue. So you've all been to the page, and we'll go through those, and then I've actually kind of set up a live demo to show you some updates. So what I'll do is I'll break down the different components when you look at an issue page. And so we'll talk high level about what that is, and then in the demo, I'll be sure to highlight it. So that first piece, that foundation of an issue, and really the foundation of FiscalNote, is our data, policy information. So with an issue, we want you to be able to add and collect all of the relevant information for that issue in that one space. From bills to regulations, we want this to be the place that anyone in your org can go to understand the policy implications of your issue. Caveat here, because it's actually a really critical piece of feedback we've heard from you. The fact that right now you have to add things to a watch list and then also to an issue. So we want to let you know that we've heard you, and this is definitely an important flow. In the future, we plan to actually incorporate notifications on the bills that you've added to an issue or the rules that you've added to an issue, very similar to the watch list. while right now we really appreciate you actually taking the time to add things to a watch list or add things to an issue, we want you to know that in the future, we definitely plan to provide those emails so you aren't adding it to two places. Lastly, on the data front, one nice kind of enhancement that watch lists don't provide is the ability to store federal regulatory comments. So this was an important piece that we'd heard from the regulatory folks among you, that sometimes it's an actual individual comment, either from one of your coalition partners or from kind of an industry challenger that you want to store. And otherwise in the system, you have no way to actually take that comment and store it. In Fiscal Note, you can actually now take that comment and put it directly into the issue. So that's one that we'd love to hear feedback from the regulatory folks on whether or not that's been helpful. The next piece that we'll go over is the files section. For those of you who've been on the beta since last November, this has actually gone through a couple of iterations. We've called it different things. You'll see that there's a drive component, but within an issue, the file section is really meant for a simple task. We know that for many organizations, you're storing information in a SharePoint or a Dropbox or a Google Drive, or sometimes just across multiple computers. Instead of constantly wondering, where did you put it? What folder is it in? What did you name it? We want you to actually associate all of the files and documents that are relevant to your issue in this portion of the feature. We've seen, we actually can't see what you've added for many security reasons, but from the feedback we're hearing, it sounds like people are storing their fly-in documents. So they'll actually upload that according to the issue so that they always know what they've sent out, as well as marketing collateral that gets kind of sent around the company so that at any moment someone can find the correct talking points or the correct images to use when it comes to that issue. Links. So this actually started, we used to call it news clippings. Once we launched the feature though, we realized that it was more than just storing news articles. The initial need came out of hearing from a client that in the morning, you get maybe 4 to 5 newsletters from Politico, Bloomberg, your trade association. And in all of those newsletters, you're getting news articles and YouTube videos and different media like that. And so by 10 a.m., after reading all those newsletters, you had 15 tabs open with articles that you either intended to read or wanted to share with a teammate. Rather than keeping those 15 tabs open, which actually does not so great things to your CPU, we wanted to give you a place that you can store those articles so that at any moment you can come back and say, oh, I remember when we were mentioned in this article, or I remember when our legislative champion actually came out against the bill in this article. One client is actually doing something pretty novel, and the product team didn't anticipate this, but they're actually storing YouTube videos, so links to YouTube videos where their CEO has appeared, or that they have actually appeared in different media conversations, whether that's on CNN or on local news channels. So this was actually interesting because if you're going to evaluate at the end of an issue, at the end of a session, what it took for you to get to your goal, understanding all those media appearances is actually pretty critical. So in addition to storing news articles, this might be some place that you want to store those kinds of links as well. So actions. Actions is one of our highest used features. And we know this because this industry is all about all the meetings that you're having, all the conversations that you're having, and having a place to store them and then report on them is really important. So we knew that this is going to be a critical part of issues. For actions, we're seeing that people are storing both past activity, so going in and retroactively saying, for this issue, issue X, we know that we went to NCSL and then we had a committee hearing and then we actually met with the CEO. Again, storing that activity over time gives you a better sense of what it took to meet your goal. And stakeholders. So stakeholders is a bit of a buzzword, and would imagine that for many of you, it's something that is very important, but it's not always clear why they're important or what you're using stakeholders for. And so this is a place where we really want to work with those of you using issues. Right now, it's a place to collect important people and organizations that pertain to your issue. So this means legislators, committees, any of your contacts, so any people or organizations. What we're seeing as commonly used stakeholders, legislative champions, committees that are related to your industry, potentially coalition members that you've uploaded into the system, or corporate subsidiaries, so you can understand where facilities are and how you're engaging with them. But this is really, really simple. It's one of our MVPs, and in our world that means the minimally viable. Like what is the smallest amount of value we can provide, and now we want to build on top of it. So as you're collecting your stakeholders, would love to understand, how do you actually pick who a stakeholder is? What are you doing with those stakeholders? Are they simply meeting with you? Are you sending them information? Might it be helpful to send them information from Fiscal Note? These are all questions that, as you're using the feature, would love to hear that feedback. And then details. And this got a little bit of a facelift last night, so we'll go over the update a little bit later. But details is a place similar to notes where you can store institutional knowledge. Until now, you could store in your notes on a bill, maybe your quick analysis and a short little snippet. Details wants to expand on that. So the details tab is where we see people actually storing potential talking points, subject matter expert analysis, impact analysis on that issue, potentially an analysis of the latest media update. You can actually outline your corporate goals for that issue. And then one title that we've seen actually come up across a number of clients is, what are we doing about it? So this, we think, comes from the fact that your issue is kind of an ongoing thing. You're constantly working on it, constantly adding information to it. And so when someone comes to the system to understand where you are on an issue, you actually just want to tell them straight on that first page, what are you doing about it? So these are just meant to be kind of thought-provoking titles that you might want to use for your details. Like I said earlier, we made a couple of updates last night. So I actually want to go over a couple of visual enhancements that we've coupled with productivity tools that relate not only to issues, but actually one of them is more broadly about the homepage and about the platform itself. So updates we made within the last couple of weeks was a homepage improvement. So now you'll notice when you sign on to Fiscal Note, the homepage is a little bit different, actually has a few more functionalities. We've added rich text formatting to the issue details section. And then we've added a cover image upload, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a bit. Something that we recognize in talking to you all is that the homepage, while it had a number of features, wasn't actually helping you navigate the platform. And that's something that we're constantly trying to encourage you to do. We want you to get to the information that you're looking for as quickly as possible. We don't want you clicking and not remembering where you were yesterday. So we released a couple of features on the homepage, one being recently viewed. So you can think about this as almost your history on Fiscal Note. Until now, you've had to kind of remember what bills you looked at and what legislators and committees you looked at. But now we'll pull up, at least on the data portion, we'll pull up what were the last bills and regulations that you viewed. We'll also show you the last discovery alerts that you viewed and then the last issues that you viewed. Once you are on that portion of the homepage, there are pins on the right side of those panes that let you actually save it to the homepage. So right now we allow you to have 5 pinned items, and you can think of these as, what am I working on this week? I know that I have 1 federal bill, 2 state bills, and an issue that are really important. Save them to your homepage. That way, every time you come to Fiscal Note, you know exactly where you were yesterday, and you can jump right into your work. Rich text formatting, and I'll actually show you guys what this looks like in the demo. In addition to storing information in Fiscal Note in your issues, we know that this is a place where you're actually sharing information as well. So someone in one jurisdiction or one state might be sharing their progress with someone in another state. And instead of just sharing plain text, we understand that highlighting and emphasizing this information is critical. So we wanted to give you a little bit more customization and be able to personalize what that information looks like on Fiscal Note. So you can use very standard things like bold and italics and hyperlinks so that you can kind of present the best information. And the last here is a cover image upload. So you'll see here, this is an issue in Fiscal Note, and you'll notice that kind of colored bar at the top. we now allow you to provide an image in that issue. There are a number of recommendations we make about the size of that image, etc. But we're really thinking about this in terms of kind of taking pride and ownership in the work you're doing. So you're taking time to fill out these issues, to really present the best work. And if you can actually associate an image that is related to it or something that is branded for your company, we imagine these images will actually play in the future into future reporting and visualizing what this issue is doing. So would love to hear feedback on that. It's a pretty simple flow that I'll show you in the demo. So we will just jump into a demo and I'll go over a number of things we just talked about. Awesome. So everyone should see the Fiscal Note platform. This is Sarah's account. Welcome, Sarah. So you all should see that when you log in. This should be pretty similar to what you saw on the homepage previously. It's a policy landscape. But we'll actually jump down to show you where those updates came from. So on the left-hand side, you'll see pinned items. Like I just mentioned, this is going to come from the items that I've been viewing. So these are state bills. What you can do is then actually pin one of these items so that this view is saved. So we'll come here and actually pin after school programming, and you'll see it just jumped up here. That way, even though I might have viewed other issues since, this pinned item will always remain there until I remove it. So to jump into issues, I actually think one of the critical pieces that I've heard from people is that adding things to issues might not be the most clear. So I just want to go over what that flow actually looks like. Whether I'm in a search or discovery alerts or watch lists, there are a number of ways to add information to your issues. On the card, you'll notice a plus sign above the watch list. It behaves very similarly to the watch list, but this is where I can come and say, I want to add or remove something from an issue. So I'll add this to acrylamide. I'll also come here and add this one. But that's not the only place. We know that you might need to do that in bulk. So you can use this to select multiple and then click Add to Issue here. This gets replicated in a number of places and across a number of data sets. The only place that it's a little bit different is when it comes to legislators and committees. When I view a legislator, I actually have to go to their page, and you'll see a button at the top that says Plus Issues. This again is where you scroll and add to an issue. That happens on legislators and committees. If we then jump into an issue, again, it's that folder icon for those of you who haven't had a chance to jump in. We'll click into the issue and you'll be able to see what that landing page is. So the way that a lot of our team is kind of imagining this page, it's kind of the mission control for this issue. So anyone in the company who wants to understand where do we stand on acrylamide, I can come to Fiscal Note and look at this page. You'll notice here a number of sections of text. Again, these get populated by the details. And so this is one place that is not always explicit. So we'll just jump into that. The Details tab is where you store information, but we want to allow you to control what information you're actually putting on that front page. So if you want to store the accomplishments and the summary, but not what is it, you click this checkbox. This is actually meant to make it so that certain issues can have certain kind of focuses and you can display them, but others might not. So giving you that control over what you share. When you click the pencil, this is where we have that rich text formatting. So if I wanted to bold the end of this and actually add a hyperlink for it, this is very similar to the way that you would use it in an email or in a Word document. This will actually then display on the overview. So you'll notice here, these are using bullets, and you can see the link here and the bold here. Again, just meant to emphasize information as opposed to just plain text. The last piece wanting to show you is the upload flow. So here, now on the settings page, you'll see background image. It's a simple upload. We provide you a little bit of recommendation here. So as you can see, wider images obviously work best, given that the screen is wider than it is long. You choose an image, and then you're able to resize it, zoom in, and load it onto the platform. So just to go over kind of what's here, upcoming actions. So this is again where the actions in the system that are associated with this issue will populate that first page. This is meant to be, what's coming up, what's next, so that I can better plan my day, plan my week. And then the last piece here is recent activity. So this is something that we've noted. Right now, your issues management system might only consist of sending emails, maybe receiving a document, and then going to a meeting. But if Fiscal Note can help kind of track what has been happening on this issue, if you leave for a couple of days for a fly-in and come back, you can always see what's been going on. And this actually gets displayed as well on the issue list in a column called recent activity. Great. So that is the overview that we wanted to give as far as kind of the details around issues and what you'd be using it for. Great. So we have a couple of questions that have come in. The first one being, will rich text formatting be available in the report section, not just in issue details? And I actually chuckled when I saw this come in, as this is actually something that the engineering team talked about yesterday. So we recognize the utility in an issue, but also in reports. And so that would be most likely the next place we expand rich text formatting. We don't have necessarily a time on that, but would love to understand why that would be helpful. Happy to follow up after this to give you a better idea. The next question is, can you export issues information? So this is a great question. I'll jump in and show you where you can export and then talk a little bit about the limits. So if I jump into this issue, the only place that allows you to export information right now is within the Data tab. So similar to a watch list or a discovery alert, if I select information, I can create a report or an export from just this issue. This is very similar to what you use now. But we are actually thinking right now, and it's in design, about how you might export more aggregate information. The question I'd pose back to you, what information would you want to export? And if you wanted to, would it be within one issue or might it be across issues? I'd love to understand that, especially because it hasn't gone into development yet, so your comments will be very helpful. One more question. So how does one delete an image? Great one. So right now, the only place to delete it is to replace it, but this is actually the next thing that we will be releasing. So we'll be sure to take down your email and let you know when you can delete the image. Right now, it would just be that you replace it with either a blank image. If you have trouble with that, feel free to email either me or Sarah. Happy to help you out. Great. And the last question that came in is actually, this person says, I'd like to get my communications team on Fiscal Note. How might I do that? So this is really interesting because a couple of our clients have actually started to expand the Fiscal Note access because they recognize that the information that they're working on and their work is relevant outside of just their team, whether that's government affairs, government relations, or public affairs. So we've actually allowed them to expand, adding other parts of the business onto Fiscal Note. And something to clarify on that is that even if other teams are on Fiscal Note, you still have a space to do work just within your team. So if I go to this issue and roll through to the permissions, I can actually add different people and or groups. So if you were to add another team to Fiscal Note, you could share certain issues with just that team, or you could share it with just your team. or you could make it an organization-wide issue. So we wanted to give you flexibility in what you display, but it is very possible to bring on other teams and other business units onto the issues platform.
This is Sarah again. Feel free to schedule a call with either Amanda or I if you'd like to go a little bit more in depth on issues or any other part of the Fiscal Note platform. I have my Calendly link up here. This link is a direct link to my calendar. Really easy to schedule time there. So definitely encourage you all to reach out with a quick question or if you'd want to schedule some time.
Thanks, Sarah. Thank you all and have a great rest of your afternoon.
Thank you. Have a good one.